Jake Miller's old freighter wasn't meant to end up on Tau 9. The engine was making noises that no engine should ever make, and the warning lights had been flashing red for the past hour. Jake had to bring the ship down on the nearest rock he could find when it finally broke down. The landing was hard. The freighter skidded across the gray surface of the barren moon, making metal scream against stone. A dozen broken seals let out steam, and the whole ship shook like a dying animal before finally coming to a stop. Jake sat in the pilot's seat for a moment, still holding the controls, and was just happy to be alive. "Damage report," he said to the computer on the ship. "Main engine is down. There is a hole in the hull in Cargo Bay 3. Life support is at 60%. Estimated time to fix, 11 hours, 42 minutes. Jake rubbed his face. 11 hours stuck on a moon that wasn't real. There are no stations nearby. For 100 light years there are no other ships. Great. It was just him, his broken freighter, and whatever this dead rock had to offer. Just great. He took his tools and went outside to fix things. The air was thin, but you could still breathe it, and the gravity was less than normal for Earth. The landscape went on and on, with only rocks, dust, and the occasional deep crack in the ground. People used to go there to hide things. Or to pass away. Jake was halfway through fixing the hull when he thought he would look at one of those cracks. There might have been something useful down there. Old ships crashed on moons like this all the time, and they were worth a lot of money. He picked up his scanner and walked toward the nearest ravine. That was when he saw it. Jake thought at first that it was a rock. A big, dark shape at the bottom of the ravine that was partly in the dark. But then the shape changed. Just a little bit. It goes up and down a little, like breathing. Jake's heart started to race. He turned on the scanning system in his suit. "Warning," the computer said in his ear. "Life form Kethril found. Type, top predator. Level of threat very high. Suggestion, get out of the area right away." Jake knew what the Kethril were. Everyone in the universe knew about them. The Vorten Empire's warrior race was bred for one thing, to fight. They were sold to arenas on a dozen worlds, where they killed for fun and sport. They were quick, strong, and deadly. No one in their right mind would get close to a Kethril. Jake didn't go though. He slowly climbed down into the ravine, and the stones under his boots made a crunching sound. He could see the creature better as he got closer. It was big, maybe 20 feet long from nose to tail, and its scales looked like polished midnight. It looked strong even when it was lying there and not moving. Risky. But it also looked like it was going to die. There were deep cuts all over its body. Some were old and had scars on them, while others were new and infected. The worst wounds bled thick, amber-colored blood. The creature's breathing was shallow and hard, and each breath sounded like it took all the strength it had left. Jake stopped about 10 feet away. The Kethril's eye opened. It was gold and had a vertical pupil like a cat's. The eye found Jake and wouldn't let go. Neither of them moved for a long time. The creature should have attacked. A Kethril could probably kill a person in seconds even if it was hurt. But it didn't move. It just stared at Jake with its golden eye, too weak to do anything else. Jake said in a low voice, "You're in bad shape, buddy." The Kethril made a noise. Not a growl or a roar, but a low rumble coming from deep in its chest. Maybe pain. Or tiredness. Jake turned around and looked at his ship. He needs to leave. This wasn't his issue. The best thing to do was to leave, finish his repairs, and get off this rock. Being friends with a Kethril was a bad idea. But those wounds got infected. The creature would die in a day or less without treatment. Jake's ship also had medical supplies. Good ones. The kind that could save a life. "Oh hell," Jake said. He went back to the freighter and got his first aid kit. It was made for people, but the basic stuff should work on most living things. Antibiotics, antiseptic, bandages, and painkillers. He also got an emergency 4 kit and 2 liters of clean water. The Kethril hadn't moved when he climbed back down into the ravine. But it was still watching him. Those golden eyes followed Jake around all the time. "Take it easy now," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm going to help you. Please don't eat me." He began with the worst injuries. The cuts were deep and the infection was bad. Jake did his best to clean them, using half a bottle of antiseptic on each one. The Kethril flinched but didn't fight back. It just lay there, breathing heavily and making a low rumbling sound every now and then. The job took a long time. Jake's back hurt from bending down, and by the time he was done bandaging the last wound, his hands were covered in amber blood. He set up the 4 and found a spot between the scales where he could put the needle in. The Kethril didn't do much. "There," Jake said, sitting back. "I can't do any better than that. The antibiotics should help with the infection, and the fluid will keep you from getting dehydrated. You get to choose the rest." The creature's eye blinked slowly. Jake thought that was a thank you. At that point the sun was going down. Jake knew he should get back to the ship because the temperature was dropping quickly. But something kept him there. It could have been stubbornness. It could have been because he had already spent so much time and money on it. Or maybe it was just the way that golden eye looked. Jake picked up some rocks and built a small shelter against the wall of the ravine. He took out his plasma rifle and put it across his lap, just in case the Kethril decided to attack him. Then he got ready for a long night. The creature's breathing became more regular over time. The bag of 4 slowly emptied. In the darkening sky above them, more stars than Jake had ever seen on Earth appeared. He thought about his sister at home and what she would say if she could see him now. She would probably call him an idiot. She would probably be right. Jake couldn't help but feel bad about it, even though he was sitting in the cold watching a deadly alien predator sleep off its wounds. The thing was hurt. He could be of help. It really was that easy. Jake had no idea that a huge warship was hanging in the dark of space, far above and beyond the atmosphere. Baroness Lyra Thane was inside that ship, standing by a big window that looked out over the moon below. She was tall and graceful, with violet eyes and the look of someone who was born to be powerful. She wore the dark uniform of a Vorton noble, and her face was blank as she watched the scene below on a holographic display. The Kethril belonged to her. Or had been until it got away from her private collection. She had been following it for weeks, planning to get her things back. But now she watched a person, someone she had thought was unimportant, put his life on the line to save a predator that could kill him easily. She said in a low voice, "Fascinating." Her second-in-command came up to her. "Baroness, should we get the asset?" "No," she said softly. "Not yet. I want to know what comes next." She couldn't look away from the screen, from the man sitting in the dark with his rifle and his compassion. She had never seen anything like this in all her years or travels across the Empire. Baroness Lyra Thane was very, very interested. Baroness Lyra Thane stood still on the observation deck of her warship, staring at the holographic display that was floating in front of her. The picture showed a man kneeling next to a huge creature and carefully wrapping bandages around its infected wounds. She had been watching for 6 hours and still couldn't figure out what she was seeing. "Play the video again," she said softly. The hologram blinked and started over. Once again she saw Jake Miller walk up to the Kethril. She saw him take out medical supplies. She watched him work for hours, bandaging wounds that could have killed him if the creature had decided to fight back. She saw him stay up all night, watching over a predator that anyone with common sense would have let die. Brock Hayes, the commander, cleared his throat. He was her second-in-command and had been a soldier for the Thane family for 20 years. He stood behind her with his hands behind his back, clearly not happy with the situation. "Baroness," he said carefully, "with all due respect, shouldn't we get the asset back? That Kethril cost the Empire a lot of money. It's property that is worth a lot. It might get away again after it gets better if we don't act quickly." "No." The word came out flat and final. Hayes blinked but didn't say anything else. Lyra kept looking at the screen. "I want to get this straight first." She had been following the Kethril for 3 weeks. It had gotten away while being moved to a new arena, killing 2 guards and disappearing into the chaos of a busy station. It had taken time and resources to find it, and when her sensors finally found it on this forgotten moon, she was ready to send a recovery team right away. But then the person came. And everything was different. Lyra had seen him find the creature. She had seen him scan it and get a warning from the computer in his suit, and she thought he would leave. That would have been the smart thing to do. The safest choice. The choice that any reasonable person would make. Instead, he had gone back to his ship to get medical supplies. Lyra had been watching something she had never seen before for the next 6 hours. The person worked slowly and carefully, giving each wound a level of care that seemed crazy given the danger. He used his own supplies, which were probably expensive for a pilot of an independent freighter. He could have left, but he stayed. He helped even though he didn't have to. And when he was done, he just left. The animal did not have a collar on. No device for tracking. No effort to claim ownership or get paid. He only left water and supplies and went back to his ship. Lyra said, "I don't get it." Hayes moved in closer. "Baroness. Put everything on this person. Full history. Name, where they came from, work history, psychological profile, everything." For a moment Hayes worked on his datapad. Jake Miller. 32 years old. Born on Earth in the North American sector. Freight hauler on my own for 8 years. Small ship, simple routes. No history of crime. Not in the military. No unpaid bills. Nothing remarkable in his file. Nothing remarkable, Lyra said again in a low voice. She watched the replay one more time. Jake Miller looked like a normal person. He was of average height and build and there was nothing special about him. But he had done something amazing. Something that she didn't understand. Commander Hayes, what would we do in Vorton culture if we found a predator that was hurt? Hayes didn't think twice. Kill it if it was a threat. If it didn't, leave it. I wouldn't waste time and money trying to save it. Exactly, Lyra said, pointing to the display. But this person does the opposite. He puts his life on the line. He makes use of his resources. He doesn't get anything out of it. Why? Hayes looked uneasy. Maybe he's not mentally stable? Do his psychological profile again. Look for things that aren't normal. Hayes tapped his datapad and then shook his head. Nothing. He's well within the range of normal for humans. Actually, a little better than average at making decisions and figuring out risks. That made it even weirder. Jake Miller wasn't insane. He wasn't dumb. He had made the decision to help a creature that could have killed him. A choice that didn't make sense, wasn't in her best interest, and went against everything Lyra had learned about staying alive. She opened up the database on human culture. She hadn't paid much attention to them before. Humans were new to the galactic community, having only been in contact with it for 2 generations. They weren't as strong as Vortons because they didn't have the natural armor and strength that made her people great. They didn't have any special skills or cool technology. Most people would say they weren't very interesting. But as Lyra read through the files, some words kept coming up. Being kind. Kindness. Being kind to others. There were many words that people used to describe the idea of helping others without expecting anything in return. They told stories about it. They had a party for it. They made whole ways of thinking about it. In Vorton's society, the strong got the resources. The weak were killed. It worked well. It made sense. It had helped her people build an empire that covered 200 worlds. They took over by being strong, kept order by being powerful, and did well by getting rid of anything that didn't help them. The strong lived. The weak died. That was how things were supposed to be. So why did watching Jake Miller make that sick animal feel like she was missing something important? This empathy, Lyra said as she read on. People think it's a strength? Hayes frowned. It seems that way, Baroness. I don't see how though. It looks more like a flaw. Spending money on things that won't work. But humanity has made it through. Even thrived. They've become part of galactic society faster than any other species in recorded history. They've made friends with groups that usually don't get along. They've made deals that should have been impossible. She looked away from the screen. Maybe their ability to feel for others isn't a bad thing. Maybe it's a weapon we don't know how to use. Hayes looked doubtful but didn't say anything. He knew better than to argue with the Baroness when she was thinking. Lyra made up her mind. Commander Hayes, plot a course that follows this person's path. I want to know where he goes and what he does. But not too openly. He shouldn't know we're watching. Baroness. Hayes was shocked. Do you want to follow a random person who hauls freight? I want to know why he acts this way. I want to see if this kindness is a pattern or just a one-time thing. And I want to know if we can learn from it. She turned around to look him in the eye. When the Baroness of the Thane family wants to know something, Commander, galaxies tend to move. This will be the same. Hayes knew that sound. He had heard it before, right before the Baroness made choices that changed the course of whole campaigns. He stood up straight and nodded. Yes, Baroness. I'll have the ship ready in less than an hour. For the next 3 days they kept an eye on Jake Miller from a distance. He finished fixing things and left Tau 9 for a trading station 2 systems over. He dropped off cargo, picked up new contracts and stopped at a supply depot. These are all normal things for a freight hauler to do. Lyra, on the other hand, saw it all. She watched how he talked to the people who worked at the station. The way he paid fair prices even though he could have gotten them lower. The way he helped an old alien carry supplies to their ship without expecting anything in return. Small things that didn't mean much on their own, but together they made a picture of someone very different from anyone Lyra had ever met. At the same time, the Kethril was getting better on Tau 9. The antibiotics had gotten rid of the infection. The 4 fluids had given it back its strength. It was well enough to move after 3 days. The creature got up on shaky legs. It would live even though its wounds still hurt. It stood there for a long time, staring up at the sky where the human ship had gone missing days before. Then it turned around and limped into the wild. The Kethril had a name but not many people cared to learn it. Garrett was his name. And Garrett didn't forget to be nice. People in his culture remembered their debts. Especially debts of life. He remembered the smell of the person. Jake Miller. The one who could have been cruel but chose to be kind. The person who helped even though they didn't have to. Garrett went into the wild parts of Town 9, but he would never forget. He would pay back what he owed when the time came. Baroness Lyra Thane sat in her warship high above and wrote in her personal log. She wrote down what Jake Miller did, how he acted, and why he was so kind. She didn't know what to do with this information yet. She wasn't sure if the Empire would benefit from knowing how empathetic people are. But she was sure of one thing: she had seen something important. Something that made her question everything she thought she knew about being strong and staying alive. Lyra Thane had not gotten her power by ignoring things that made her question what she thought she knew about the universe. Jake had been gone from Town 9 for 2 months, and he had almost forgotten about the hurt animal in the ravine. Things were back to normal. He moved cargo from one station to another, made enough money to keep his ship running, and didn't think too much about what would happen next. Jake liked that life was simple. But things that are simple don't stay that way. 3 hours away from Kepler Station, a major trading hub on the edge of civilized space, his ship's computer started to beep. Jake frowned at the screen and put down the sandwich he had been eating. "What's wrong now?" The AI said in its usual calm voice, "3 ships coming in fast. The setup is like that of known pirate ships. Carvex-class raiders." Jake's stomach dropped. He put down his sandwich and took the controls. Distance: 40,000 kilometers and getting closer. In 4 minutes they will be within range of our weapons. Shit. Jake began to think about his choices. They weren't good. His freighter wasn't made to fight. It had shields, but they were old and weak. It had weapons, but they hadn't worked in a month because he couldn't pay for the parts to fix them. He might have been able to run against 1 pirate ship. He didn't stand a chance against 3. Try to get in touch with Kepler Station. Tell them we need help. The station is too far away. Even if they send security, they won't get there in time. Jake's hands moved over the controls, sending all the power that was available to the shields and engines. That wouldn't be enough. He was sure it wouldn't be enough. But he had to give it a shot. The 3 pirate ships showed up on his screen, looking sleek and dangerous. People all over the sector knew about the Carvex raiders. They didn't keep any prisoners. They didn't talk things over. They sank ships and took whatever cargo they could find. Shields at 40%, the AI said. Still no weapons. Calculating the chances of survival. Don't worry about it. I can do math. Chance of survival, 11%. Jake laughed, but it wasn't funny. Yes, that's what I thought too. The pirates shot. Red beams of energy shot through the dark and hit Jake's shields. The entire ship shook. Lights that warned flashed on every panel. The shields stayed up for about 3 seconds before falling down completely. The second volley hit the hull directly. The metal screamed. Sparks flew from a control panel on Jake's left. The lights flickered and went out, leaving behind dim emergency lights that made everything look like a nightmare. Hull breach in cargo bay. The life support system is failing. Engines at 15%. Jake knew it was pointless, but he kept his hands on the controls. The third volley was on its way. It would go right through his ship like paper, and that would be the end of it. He thought about his sister who was still on Earth. She had told him not to accept this job. She had told him that hauling freight on the edge of space was too risky. She was right. He thought about whether or not she would ever find out what happened to him. The pirates shot again. Jake shut his eyes. And then the light exploded all over the universe. Jake could see the blast even though his eyes were closed. His ship's sensors went crazy. The view screen turned white, then slowly returned to normal. Jake didn't know what he was looking at when he could see again. There were no more pirate ships. Not broken. Not backing down. Gone. There was nothing but trash where they'd been. Metal that is bent. Pieces slowly spinning in the empty space. And behind it all, like a predator coming out of the dark, was a ship that Jake had never seen before. It was huge, at least 10 times bigger than his freighter. The hull was dark, almost black, and had sharp angles and armor plating on it. There were weapons on every surface. It moved with a deadly grace, like a shark swimming through water. There was a symbol on the side that Jake recognized from news feeds, the crest of Vorton nobility. What the hell? Jake said something in a low voice. His communication system came to life with a crackle. Jake forgot how to breathe when a face showed up on his screen. She was so beautiful that it was almost scary. Her high cheekbones, sharp features, and violet eyes seemed to see right through him. She had her dark hair pulled back in a pretty way, and her uniform made her look like a military officer. But Jake was drawn to the look on her face. She stared at him like he was a puzzle she was trying to figure out. "Jake Miller," she said. Her voice was smooth and cultured, and her accent made her sound rich and powerful. Jake's mouth opened, but he didn't say anything. "I am the Baroness Lyra Thane of the Vorten Empire." She said it like she thought he would know the name. Jake didn't know, but he knew that anyone who could command a warship like that was important. Jake said. His mind was still trying to figure out what had just happened. "Thanks for the save. Thank you for keeping me alive. The pirates were going to kill me." "I know." The Baroness moved her head a little to the side. "You helped a Kethril on Tau 9 2 months ago. Garrett is his name." Jake blinked. That was something he didn't expect. "The thing in the ravine? You know about that?" "I know everything about it. I was there. Looking." She said it like spying on someone from space was the most normal thing in the world. Life debts are very important in Vorten culture. When someone saves your life, you have to pay them back. He can't pay you back himself because he has gone back to the wild. So, I pay off his debt in his place. Jake's head was spinning. "Have you been following me?" 2 months. "What you did caught my interest. Not many people would show mercy to a natural predator. Even fewer would expect nothing in return." The Baroness leaned a little bit forward. "Tell me, Jake Miller. Why did you help him?" He was hurt. I had first aid supplies. It felt wrong not to help." For a long time, the Baroness stared at him. Those violet eyes were intense and searching. "Wrong?" she said again softly. Jake felt like she was reading something in him that he didn't even know was there. "You did what you did because it felt wrong not to. Not because it makes sense. Not because of gain. Because of how it felt." "I guess so, yes." "Interesting," she said as she sat back. "That urge, that feeling that something is wrong, may be more important than you think. Jake Miller, the universe is changing. People are questioning the old rules. And beings like you, with your strange human kindness, are at the center of it." Jake didn't know what she was talking about. "I'm just a truck driver. You're more than that. You just don't know it yet." The Baroness pointed to something that wasn't on screen. "I think you should stop at Kepler Station and fix things. Your ship has been badly damaged. My crew will make sure you get to the station safely." "I don't understand. Why are you helping me? What do you want?" The Baroness smiled. Jake couldn't quite read what was in the small smile. Maybe it's just curiosity. Or figuring. "We will talk again, Jake Miller. So, your kindness to Garrett has had effects that go deeper than you know. Things are moving. People are making choices. You have become part of something bigger than yourself, whether you wanted to or not." The screen turned off. Jake was in his broken ship, surrounded by flashing emergency lights and the smell of burnt electronics. His hands were shaking. He let out a slow breath and realized he had been holding it. "AI," he said to the empty cockpit. "What the hell just happened?" For a moment, the computer was quiet while it worked. Not enough data to do a meaningful analysis. "But it looks like the Vorten nobility is interested in you. In the past, this has led to big changes in people's lives. That doesn't help." "I know. Do you want me to chart a course to Kepler Station?" Jake looked at the view screen and saw that the huge Vorten warship was now keeping up with his damaged freighter. Keeping him safe. He thought about what the Baroness had said. Ripples in deeper water. Things are moving. Something bigger than you. He'd helped a dying animal 2 months ago because it seemed like the right thing to do. He didn't want anything. I didn't expect anything. He had just done it and moved on. A Vorten Baroness was now following him across the galaxy, talking about debts, changes, and the universe moving. Jake thought about how simple his life was, moving cargo from one station to the next. He thought life was over. "Yeah," he said at last. "Plan the route. Let's go to Kepler Station. I want a drink. Maybe a few drinks." The AI agreed, and Jake's damaged freighter slowly made its way to the station, followed by a warship that could have wiped out whole fleets. Baroness Lyra Thane watched him leave from somewhere in the dark of space, her violet eyes deep in thought. The debt was settled. But the story wasn't over yet. Jake tried to get back to normal life 3 weeks after the pirate attack. He repaired his ship, took on new cargo jobs, and tried not to think about Vorten warships or strange baronesses. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, though. That his simple life was slowly falling apart. The message came through while he was at a rundown refueling station on the edge of known space. The depot was a place that no one wanted to go unless they had to. It was full of rusted metal and flickering lights. Jake's ship's computer beeped while he was waiting for his fuel tanks to fill. Incoming priority transmission. Level of encryption, Vorten diplomatic. Jake frowned. "Do it." The message was only audio, but he knew the voice right away. Baroness Lyra Thane spoke in the same calm, authoritative way he remembered. "Mr. Miller. Baroness Thane is this. I need to talk to you right away. I'm sending the meeting location's coordinates. Come by yourself. Don't tell anyone. It could mean the difference between life and death. The message was over. Jake sat in his pilot's chair and looked at the coordinates that had shown up on his screen. They pointed to a place in dead space, which is the area between star systems where ships rarely traveled because sensors didn't work right and it was easy to get lost. Jake's mind was telling him that this was a bad idea. Meeting a Vorten noble in secret in the middle of nowhere, where no one could help him if something went wrong. That was how people went missing and were never seen or heard from again. But the Baroness had kept him alive. She had paid off Garrett's debt. And there was something in her voice that sounded serious. Not a threat but an emergency. Damn it, Jake said. He knew he had to go. He had known it since the first time he heard her voice. 2 hours later, his ship stopped going faster than light at the coordinates. Dead space looked just like it sounds. There are no stars nearby. There are no planets. There was only darkness with no stars or planets in sight. It was the kind of place that made you feel very small and very alone. But he wasn't by himself. The Baroness's warship was there, hanging in the air like a giant sleeping. It was even more impressive when you got close. Jake had seen military ships before, but not like this one. This ship was made to be powerful, to be in charge, and to make sure everyone knew who was in charge. Incoming docking request, his AI said. Jake said yes. As he drove his small freighter into the huge docking bay, it looked like a toy next to the warship. When he stepped outside, armed guards were waiting for him. They were all Vorten and looked at him as if they weren't sure if he was a guest or a prisoner. This way, one of them said, pointing with a weapon that Jake really hoped was set to stun. They took him through halls that shone with polished metal and had soft lighting. The ship's design and everything else about it screamed wealth and military precision. Jake didn't fit in at all in his old flight suit and scuffed boots. They finally got to a door that opened to a private room. It was classy but not too much. A big window let in the dark of space. Furniture that looked like it would be comfortable and cost a lot. Baroness Lyra Thane stood by the window with her hands behind her back. She turned to look at him when he came in. This time she wasn't in a military uniform. Instead, she wore dark, well-tailored clothes that looked like formal civilian clothes. But her violet eyes were just as strong as he remembered. Mr. Miller. Thanks for coming. You said it could save my life. Looked like it was important. Yes, it is. She pointed to a chair. Please have a seat. We have a lot to talk about. Jake sat down, but he couldn't relax because he was too nervous. The guards had gone and locked the door behind them. There were only 2 of them now. The Baroness didn't waste any time. The Galactic Council is breaking up. You know this? Jake shook his head. I don't get involved in politics. That's the safer way to do it. You won't be able to do that for much longer. She got up from the window and sat down across from him. Several aggressive species are pushing for laws to kick people out of council space. In 40 days the vote will take place. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. Why would they do that? They call your kind dangerous soft-hearts. Not predictable. A threat to the way things are. The Baroness had a serious look on her face. Some races in the galaxy have built their civilizations on very strict rules. Power is important. Power is important. People who can take resources and keep them get them. It makes sense. It works well. It works. Okay, what's the problem? People don't follow those rules. You help people who are against you. When logic says you should destroy, you show mercy. You make alliances based on how you feel, not on what you think is best for your strategy. You put your life on the line to save a dying predator that could have killed you. She leaned in. And that scares them. Jake tried to make sense of what he was hearing. Because we're nice? They want to kick us out because we're nice? Because you're unpredictable. Because being kind makes things happen that they can't control. Jake, think about it. Their whole social structure falls apart if kindness and mercy are seen as important traits and helping the weak is seen as strength instead of weakness. The strong would no longer have a reason to control the weak. People would have to share their resources. People would have to question power. This is about control, then. Politics is all about control, the Baroness said as she stood up and walked to the window. There are 3 main species that are trying to get rid of humans. The Carvex, who you may have already met as pirates. The Draxian Collective thinks that feelings are flaws in evolution. And the Terran hegemony, whose whole empire is based on winning wars. Jake was cold. How does this affect me? The Baroness turned to look at him. I lead a group within the Vorten Empire that sees things differently. We think that being able to feel for others isn't a bad thing. We think it's a strategic advantage. Your kind has only been in the galactic community for 2 generations, But you've made more real alliances than races that have been here for hundreds of years. You made peace between groups that have been fighting for generations. You've done things that should have been impossible. Because we see people as people, not as assets. That's right. We do, however, need proof. We need to show the council that being kind makes you strong, not weak. And that's where you come in. Jake had a bad feeling about where this was going. You want me to testify? The council meets in 40 days. I need you to talk to people from 73 different species and tell them why you helped Garrett. Why you put your life in danger for a creature that could have killed you. Why caring is important. Jake laughed, but it sounded forced and bitter. I'm a pilot for freighters. I don't matter. Why would anyone listen to me? Because you saved a Kethral's life without expecting anything in return. You are proof that being able to understand others is not a sign of weakness. The Baroness had very intense violet eyes. You did something that no Vorten would do. Something that most species wouldn't even think of. And it does matter, Jake. More than you know it matters. Jake got up and ran his hands through his hair. This is nuts. I just helped an animal that was hurt. That's it. I didn't think about politics, social structures, or how to get ahead. I did what I thought was right. I know. That's why what you say will be important. You didn't help Garrett because you thought about how it would help you. You helped because you couldn't turn your back on pain. We need that kind of pure motive. And what if I say no? For a moment, the Baroness was quiet. Then people will probably be kicked out of council space. Your people will be alone, cut off from trade routes, alliances, and safety. Some species will take that as a sign that they can attack Earth directly. There could be billions of lives at risk. Jake felt like it was crushing him. That's not right. You can't blame me for that. I'm not. The universe is putting it on you. I'm just letting you know what's at stake. She got closer. But there's a problem. Your testimony alone won't be enough. The council will say that it is self-serving and propaganda for people. We need Garrett to come and testify. We need him to go in front of the council and confirm what you did, to speak for what your kindness did. Garrett. Jake looked at her. He could be anywhere in the universe. He went into the wilds of Tau 9. How are we supposed to look for him? I don't know. But we have 40 days to give it a shot. The Baroness looked serious. Jake, I'm asking you to do something hard and risky. I'm asking you to help me find a Kethral in the wild, get him to come to the council, and talk about something he might not even know is important. It's a long shot, but it's the only chance we have. Jake looked at this alien woman, a Baroness from an empire built on strength and conquest. She was asking him to save his people by showing that kindness was important. It was stupid. It was not possible. It was insane. But then again, helping a dying predator on a forgotten moon was also strange. Jake took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Okay. Let's look for Garrett. The Baroness nodded, and for the first time, Jake saw something like respect in her violet eyes. Thanks, Jake Miller. You might have just saved your kind. Okay, but let's find Garrett first before we start to party. They had a month and a half. You have 40 days to find one creature on a whole moon. It took 40 days to get him to testify. 40 days to save all of us. Jake had been through tough times before. But not like this. The search was about to start. Jake had never seen anything like the council chamber before. It was huge, a perfect sphere that looked like it went on forever in all directions. There were no floors or ceilings, just curved walls with screens and holographic displays on them. 73 different species were represented in special pods that let them move around freely in the zero-gravity environment. Jake floated in the part of the human delegation that was too small and too open for him. He could see it all. Insects with compound eyes. Reptilian creatures with scales on their bodies. Things that are gas-like and are held in force fields. He couldn't even begin to describe the species. And they were all here to decide what would happen to people. Jake had been listening to the arguments for 3 days. For 3 days, I sat in that pod and watched species after species stand in front of the council and explain why humans should be kicked out of galactic society. The Carvex delegate said that humans were chaos agents who act on emotion instead of logic. The Draxian representative had shown data that showed how human unpredictability messed up trade routes and political alliances that had been in place for a long time. The Terran ambassador said that humans' tendency to help weaker species upset the natural order of strength and power. They said things like dangerous, liability, and not good for galactic stability. They used charts, graphs, and examples from history. They put together their case piece by piece in a logical way. Jake had been sitting there for hours, feeling smaller and smaller, and wondering how he was going to argue against all of that. Now it was his turn. The council speaker said, Jake Miller, and the translation came through as a neutral, genderless voice. You may give your testimony. Jake's pod floated toward the middle of the room. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him. Maybe thousands. Some people are curious. Some not friendly. Some were just waiting to hear what this person had to say. His mouth was parched. His heart was racing. He had never been good at speaking in front of people. He had failed every presentation assignment he had in school. And now he was floating in front of people from 73 different alien species, who expected him to save his whole race with words. He coughed. The sound bounced off the walls of the big room. I'm not a diplomat, Jake said. His voice sounded strange to him because it was being amplified and translated into many languages at once. I'm not a politician, a scholar, or anyone else important. I just move freight from one station to another. That's all I've ever been. He saw some of the delegates look at each other. He could picture what they were thinking. 2 months ago, my ship broke down on a moon called Tau 9. Why was this nobody talking to the council? I found a Kethril in a ravine while I was fixing things. He was going to die. Wounds that were infected, dehydration, and probably only a day or two left to live. Jake stopped for a moment to remember the golden eye that was looking at him. I helped him. I used the medical supplies I had to help him heal. I stayed with him all night to make sure he didn't die. Then I went. The Carvex delegate cut in with a sharp, accusatory voice. And why did you do this? What did you want to get? Nothing, Jake said. I didn't want to gain anything. He was in pain and I could have stopped it. It felt wrong not to help when I could have. That's all there is to it. That's exactly what we mean. The Carvex delegate's pod moved forward quickly and forcefully. People do things based on how they feel, not on what makes sense. On wrong instead of calculation. This is the kind of disorder we're talking about. This is what makes your species dangerous. You can't predict what will happen. Jake turned to look the delegate in the eye. Maybe you're right. It could be chaos. But that mess is what keeps me alive right now. Those pirates who attacked me 3 weeks ago? They would have killed me. But Baroness Thane saved my life because of what I did on Tau 9. In her culture, debts of life are very important. Because my chaos made a bond that saved me. He looked around the room and tried to meet as many people's eyes as he could. You say it's hard to predict. You say it's risky. But maybe it's just not what you're used to. Maybe helping someone without expecting anything in return isn't a sign of weakness. Maybe it's... The doors to the chamber blew up. Even in a vacuum-protected space, the noise was deafening. Alarms went off. The police got ready. Delegates' pods broke up in a panic as debris flew in. Garrett came through the broken door. 20 feet of dark blue scales and pure muscle. His golden eyes shone with a lot of light. As he pulled himself through the zero gravity, his claws scraped against the walls of the chamber. 3 more Kethril came up behind him. They were smaller but just as impressive. His clan in the wild. The room was full of chaos. Delegates yelled in a dozen different languages. The security forces raised their guns. The speaker of the council was yelling for order. But Garrett's voice cut through everything like a knife. Silence. The word echoed through the translation systems, loud and clear. The room became quiet. Even the police and military were unsure and hesitant. Garrett pushed himself toward the middle of the room, toward Jake's platform. For a short time Jake was really scared. The creature was even more impressive than he had thought. Healed, strong, and full of power. But Garrett didn't fight back. He stopped next to Jake's pod, and his huge head was at the same level as Jake's. Jake saw recognition in those golden eyes when they met his. Memory. Garrett's voice echoed through the room as he said, "This person saved my life when I was dying. I was property that had been stolen. Injured. Pray. He didn't have to help me. Not worth the trouble. There is no benefit to looking. I was a predator who could have killed him as soon as I got my strength back." Garrett turned to the whole council and spoke with the weight of complete certainty. But he helped me anyway. He made use of his resources. He put his safety on the line. He stayed with me all night to make sure I lived. He left when I was stable. He didn't expect anything. He didn't ask for anything. He helped me out of the goodness of his heart. The Carvex delegate tried to stop. "This doesn't prove anything but, it proves everything," Garrett yelled. The delegate's pod quickly pulled back. "Only strength is respected by my kind. We are made to fight. We adore power. People have told us that being kind is a sign of weakness, that being merciful is a sign of failure, and that only the strong should live." His golden eyes looked around the room. "But we forgot something. There are many ways to be strong. This person had a strong spirit. The strength to help even when it costs you something. The strength to be kind when you could be cruel. The strength to do what is right instead of what is good for business. Garrett's clan members moved forward and surrounded him. Their combined presence was so strong that it filled the center of the room with raw, primal energy. Garrett went on, "Your warrior races have forgotten this. You think being kind is weak. You call mercy a mess. You say that empathy is a bad thing. But I'm here because someone had the strength to care. I'm alive because someone was kind. And I'm free because someone cared." He looked right at the Carvex delegate. "You say people are hard to predict. Not safe. A danger to order. But think about this. Would you rather have people on your side or against you? Would you rather have a species that could help you when you're at your worst, or one that will decide if your life is worth saving before doing anything?" There was no sound at all in the chamber now. Everyone in the room was watching and listening to Garrett. Baroness Lyra Thane's pod moved smoothly forward. Her violet eyes were calm but intense, and she looked elegant and put together. "The Vorten Empire has conquered through force for millennia," she said. "We are strong. We have a lot of power. We have built an empire that covers 200 worlds. We have subjects on 1,000 worlds. People in the galaxy are afraid of us." She stopped for a moment to let that sink in. "But we don't have many real friends. There are people who obey us because they have to. We have business partners who work with us because it makes them money. We make short-term alliances that are good for both of us. But real friends? People who would help us just because we need it? We don't have many." The Baroness pointed at Jake. "People make connections that we can't. They change foes into friends. They make people loyal by being kind, not by scaring them. They have made more real alliances in 2 generations than we have in 2,000 years. That is a very important strategic asset." She looked around the room. "You are afraid of how unpredictable people are. But maybe what you're really afraid of is that their way works. That kindness builds stronger relationships than winning. That mercy makes stronger alliances than power. That their chaos might be more stable than your order." As people started to murmur, the council speaker asked for silence. "The council will now vote on whether or not humans are still part of galactic society. All delegates, please cast your votes." Jake saw lights come on in the room, each one standing for a species vote. Yes, green. No means red. As delegates made their choices, the colors changed and flickered. It was a close call. Jake was so close that he could barely breathe. Finally, the Speaker of the Council announced the results. By 3 votes, people will stay in council space. Jake thought he might faint. 3 votes. 3 species had the power to change the future of humanity or keep it alone. Garrett went up to Jake's pod one last time as the chamber started to empty. "My clan offers you warrior kinship, Jake Miller. You have our swords. We are loyal to you. We are friends with you. This is a bond that will never break." Jake nodded, not sure he could speak. The Baroness's pod floated closer. "Good job, Jake Miller. You might have just changed the course of history in the galaxy." "I just told the truth," Jake said. "That's all it takes sometimes." Jake was back in his damaged freighter hours later, getting ready to go home to Earth. But he wasn't by himself anymore. A Vorten warship stayed close to his left side. 3 Kethral clan ships were to his right. An ambassador's escort. Jake thought about giving his sister a call. "I thought about trying to explain everything that had happened. She would never trust him. He didn't really believe it either. He was a nobody 2 months ago. A truck driver who was just trying to make ends meet. Then he helped a dying animal because it seemed like the right thing to do. And somehow, that one kind act had turned into this. To save his kind. To make friends with warrior races. Into making the future different." Jake smiled as he wrote down the jump coordinates for Earth. Perhaps compassion didn't make sense. It could have been chaos. People who valued order above all else might have thought he was unpredictable and dangerous. But it seems like chaos had its own kind of power. And sometimes that strength was strong enough to change everything.